Everything on his laptop.
Yeah, his prompter was just the hard drive feed.
It's sticky.
It was just the files from Hunter's hard drive, like the chicken Jurassic Park. I just need to find the right file. Com.gov, here. What's going on?
And with an adult is his soft drive.
Yes.
All right, sorry. I really tried not to.
Yeah. Well, okay. And also, by the way, it's not all one hard drive. There are sister drives, niece drives. In Louisville, Kentucky, a group of Black Lives Matter protesters swarmed a local diner. But this is one of those kind of feel-good stories. We're met by a local gentleman carrying one of the funniest guns in existence.
For what I remember, I think you saw about the story of the guy that seemed to try to protect his property from radical BLM protesters who, for what I remember, did not really do anything, were just there, but I understand he felt threatened. There's a group of people shouting at him, yelling at him. I think some did try to break in, so he was like, hey, self-defense, baby, get off my lawn. Yeah, but if I'm correct, most of them did not do really anything. But again, if you have a large crowd yelling at you, you're like, I'm an old man. Some might be like trying to get into my property. Time to get the gun. Get off my lawn. So it's like I said earlier on with history, it's ugly. You have some good parts, you have some bad parts of this story. It's ugly. It's a little bit complicated. It's like, okay, if you're in their shoes, would you do that? Some might say no, because all they're doing is just protesting. I don't, but for me, I would at least be ready. Would I have a big shotgun and, like, point at people? No, but I'll be like, I don't have a shotgun near me or something, or, make sure I have a handgun, or go into my house, make sure I get my handgun, make sure it's, everything's good to go, put safety on, and, just be prepared. If someone try to get in, I might have the right to shoot them because they're might be trying to do something bad to me or my property. Not like, oh boy, my property, these slaves, these proletariats. The blues also need to protect my property. No, it's like, that's my property. I worked hard for it. I also have a gun. I worked hard to get that. Well, depending on which state, I didn't have to work hard to get that, which is kind of a problem. Not banning guns, at least, a gun's a tool, and like a car, it's like you should have a license, you should have all those things, because it's quite, it's one of those tools that you really need something like that, quite obviously. Listen, I've shooted guns before. I went to things of that nature. I have a shotgun and pistol merit badge. I kind of know what I'm talking about. I was RNA verified, if I'm correct, or I had a card that I can use for the RNA. So, like, I'm just saying, I'm a little bit of an expert on guns, a little bit there. I don't know, like, caliber or that, but I do know, like, hey, this is what you do with a gun. Any gun, treat it as a loaded gun, even if you think it's unloaded, treat it like it's a loaded gun. If you don't know what to do with it, do not use it. Don't pick it up, or if you're going to do it rightly, make sure safety, all those things, all those goodies, because a gun is a tool. You can use it for good or bad. But, even like certain power tools, or like a car, guns should have something like a license. Something to know it's like, okay, I'm putting this weapon, also some other tool, mainly to destroy and kill. That's mainly its purpose, for the gun to destroy or kill something. I'm gonna make sure I am being responsible as the person who owns the guns and let people buy them from me, to make sure they know what they're doing. They know what you're doing. Like driving a car, or having a power tool. Particular power tool. I gotta know.
No. So you can put in the belt buckles and the chewing tobacco.
Leslie Jones?
I'm impressed by the mitts on that broad.
I know.
Yeah, he's quite sexist. If you don't know that now, you do now. Oh boy. I think he's still sexist. I don't know. God forgive him.
And by the way, not to mention the chewing tobacco.
Where was the gun?
Here's a picture of it, actually, more clearly. And you know what's funny?
Derringer?
I have that exact firearm.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's a North American mini arms.
And he's so cowardly, to be blunt, that he has not a holster. He has a protective bulletproof vest because apparently he's afraid that the gay, lesbian, trans communists will go after him or something. I don't know. He's quite insecure, and I think everybody knows why now, especially with his whole scandal with his wife, and a lot of people fired, which, if I'm correct, the crew that he has in this podcast episode, I think he only has Garrett, was basically not, he has Garrett, not, he has Garrett, the conservative version of not gay Jared, which, free Jared. If I got that right, I think it's Garrett, not Jared. Jared's the one that used to free him from his, what was it? IDA? Not IDA, something. For we can't speak, which I guess would be anti-free speech to Crowder, but I guess not, because he knows the difference now. An NDA, yeah. It's an NDA. Free Jared. I think it's Jared, or is it Garrett? Free the person who has the NDA. Unjustifiably. And of course, a lot of people, I think even Ben Shapiro as well, was he really wanted to show his junk. I mean, we all saw the famous in his underwear interview with Ben Shapiro. I mean, Ben Shapiro, not in his underwear, that'll be, oh gosh, a nightmare. But Steven Crowder, another nightmare that sadly is in reality, in his underwear interviewing Ben Shapiro on, I think, his show or Ben Shapiro's show with the lights, Sunday Talks. I forgot. You have to look it up for yourself, but it's yeah. Carter might be insecure and might be suppressing certain things, like maybe being gay. Because how he talks about the Spartans, H3 kind of pointed that out, then Sam Cedar came in and, that Cold Feet Crowder and all those things. Debate Sam Cedar, come on. You got nothing else to lose at this point. It's just, yeah. Yeesh.
They specialize in small guns. It's a 22 or 22 Magnum. Yeah. They sell actually belt buckles, so you can put in the belt buckle.
Yeah.
And it just looks like a belt buckle. Someone's like, is that a belt buckle? Yeah. It's a surprise, bitch!
Gotcha. Either that or you won the rodeo.
And by the way, it turns out, I don't know if you know this, it turns out that actually wasn't the first time this man has had to do something like that. We actually have footage of an earlier incident where he avoided being robbed this last summer.
So I think he would be a little bit, not necessarily sticking up, but a lot more prepared, especially if it's not just one person that tried to break into his house, but but a group of people who might not all be there for the same reason as mainly there. I think to protest him for not being BLM enough or something. I don't remember. It's been quite a long time.
Come on, ambulance! Come on, ambulance! But not for me.
Wow. Dude.
Wow.
I know we say that's corny, but if that actually ever happens in real life, give that man a medal.
It should happen every day.
Yeah. If the man actually has the clarity of thought to deliver a perfect one-liner.
Right. Yes. I bet there's not a lot of one-liners delivered during self-defense.
No, probably not. Although one time I watched Real TV, and there was a person of a Latinx individual who was robbing a bank and got shot with, this was back when you couldn't show someone die on television, got shot with bird shot, but shotgun in the chest. And I laughed so hard, my mom sent me to my room for being disruptive. The guy at the bank, the teller, pulls out a shotgun, shoots him with bird shot, and I swear to you, the guy with the mustache goes, "Ay, ay, ay," and then falls.
Oh, no.
And I was sitting peeing myself because I thought it was fake. Yeah. By the way, we have a new sound guy working today. It's El Team. Yeah.
I think he got fired too, or deported, who knows at this point. But I do want to get back a little bit to catch up with my notes about freedom and all, about Steven Crowder, what he said earlier. You know what, Crowder? You're right. I also don't feel very free when some states are making laws to deny the medical care that some people need, because the care that they need is somehow controversial because of ignorance, prejudice, and not understanding the procedures of that medical care. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch some of Zora's vids on it or Hunter Avila. Mainly Soros. He talked a little bit more about the genocide of a certain group of people that seems to somewhat be happening. I will go over that in the future of my channel. He has a vid on it, Hunter Avila, I think, as well, talking about, to give you a hint, it's about trans people. So yeah, I don't feel that free. I don't feel that free when based on a lie. Some states are making it harder to do one of the most, if not one of the most, not the most freest things you can do in America is to vote, especially with the so-called SAVE Act, or as I call it, Republicans Against Women Act, because that is what it is. If I'm correct, it's like 64 million people, mainly women, if I'm correct, and somewhat trans people as well. I think they're targeting mainly trans people, also women, it seems, that they can't vote. They can't vote. Prayerfully that act never gets to pass in the light of day, in Jesus Christ's name, amen. But yeah, it's getting tough. I don't feel so free. I'm not trans. I'm just saying I don't feel so free when other people aren't so free to get medical care. I'm not talking about pronouns. I'm talking about needed medical care. So it's just so yeah, I can agree with you, but I just disagree on why we don't feel free in some cases. At the end of the day, I think we need to get back to where we used to agree on the problem, but disagree on the solution, or just agreeing on something and disagreeing on others. We're mainly disagreeing, not agreeing, and prayerfully we get back to agreeing on some things at least. Dear God, in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Because that's what Russia wants. That's what they've been trying to do, to create division on the inside, because they know they can't beat us up on the outside. Sadly, we got a lot of people on the inside of White House, sadly, whether they know it or not, are working for what Russia wants. The destruction of America from the inside. Because they know they can never defeat us outside. Gotta pray against that, folks. Gotta pray.
Well, I know he's not dead.
No, not El Team. Yeah, he's fine. Caitlyn Jenner, beautiful and brave, once a darling, now yesterday's trash. Yeah, according to the left, released her new campaign ad. Caitlyn released Caitlyn's. Let's avoid, because no matter how hard we try to keep it right, we don't want to end up like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Nope. President of the United States. We don't want to end up like that. So let's just use the name. You can legally change your name to Caitlyn. Okay? So I'm not going to say he, her, his. I don't care. Caitlyn.
You do care, apparently, because you're like, I say this for your YouTube. It's like, if you didn't care, just call her Caitlyn, or just call her by her name, which, yeah, listen, if you don't like the pronoun stuff, sir, I think it's just, like, the world will not destroy itself if you dare call her a she. You know? Like, now if they're forcing everybody else to call her a she, then we might have a problem, but if they're not, and they're like, hey, maybe some respect, just saying. They're not, or else they're just like, hey, some respect, it's like, I'll do that, I disagree with it, but I'm like, it's a word. I thought words didn't really hurt that much on the right, but I guess they do now. He doesn't care, but he does care, folks. He really does care.
Caitlyn's first campaign ad. Here you go.
I've always been a dreamer. California was once the envy of the world. We had what everyone else wanted. The American dream grew up here. Yet career politicians and their policies have destroyed that dream. It's been locked away, closed, shuttered.
I don't see what's fine. I'm sorry, they're children, I forgot. They're children, you gotta trust them a little bit, like, shh, I'm trying to listen to an adult here. Can you stop?
In the dark.
Put in my lockbox with my old partner.
Now is the time to achieve that summit, to be the shining city on the hill, and together we'll restore and renew the California dream.
Okay. By the way, what do you think that dog thinks when he sniffs Caitlyn's crotch?
Probably the.
I don't know what to say, folks. Folks, Folks, I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry about that, folks. I just want to formally apologize for that thing that just happened with Crowder, folks. I'm sorry. I just, man. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. How sweet the sound, folks. How sweet the sound. Oh gosh.
Girls have a vagina.
Hate speech, kindergarten cop, 3-year-old.
Cancel him. Evil.
How dare you? You know what was so confusing about this ad? They played clips of Bruce Jenner, and it said, Bruce Jenner winning the gold medal. And I'm like, wait, I thought that was dead naming.
Yeah, you can't.
And by the way, they rushed this ad out. That's what
Caitlyn Jenner is one of those trans people like Bray Wyatt that are like very right wing, and they're a complicated bunch, but they deserve to be who they are, you know? But they're just a complicated bunch. It's like, are you self-hating at this? Like, what are you? I do not understand this. I do not understand. I do not understand. I do not understand. I'm not using that for racism, unlike Crowder does.
That's why you can hear Caitlyn going, cut, edit that out.
Bruce killed a guy. I did. It wasn't me.
That guy's a
You're
murderer.
thinking of that old crazy man.
That's actually a little bit funny, but it's like, it's funny in a way of, okay, the voice is funny, but like, the content, well, what content?
I'm just that great big fat girl. Big fat person ruined your state.
Here's the issue too. Is look, I want to be clear. I mean, trying to be consistent.
Yeah.
I think Caitlyn Jenner's a little nutty.
Yeah.
And would not be my first choice for governor. I don't want people saying, "Well, you're flip flopping," but the left uses these people as pawns.
Yeah.
They really do. You're a useful.
You use them as pawns, and now right-wingers are using detransitioners, which should be loved and respected and understood and accepted, as pawns to go against another minority group. And it's like, wow. It's just sad.
And then they turn on you. If I had to vote in California between Gavin Newsom or Caitlyn Jenner, I mean, it would take a lot of alcohol beforehand for me to pull that lever, okay?
Yep. I don't know how. I think it's quite simple now, especially now. You would most likely go with Gavin Newsom, but back then, I mean, Caitlyn Jenner. And like, even if I would disagree with it, like, you know what, Caitlyn Jenner would be just better for California as a whole. I don't know about now,
but I will say you've got a transgender Republican, more conservative, who opposes transgender men competing in women's sports. And then you have a cis male straight out of Central Casting who supports it.
I do not condone nor condemn the word of the C word. This might be on Twitter. I just want to point that out there. Not really. I'm joking, but I want to play it safe. I'm like, X, don't ban this. I didn't say that word, that banned word. You know, and to be consistent, that's not anti-free speech. I mean, ideally, in a sense, it is. Which, by the way, okay. The idea of free speech is that you should freely speak basically whatever, to an extent, even in platforms, because ideally you won't want private platforms with their TOS to be as free speechy as possible, in a sense, because that is where you can really voice your opinion to multiple people in multiple countries, but the legality is that if they have TOSs that you don't like, that's not anti-free speech, because they're not the government. They're not the government who are establishing or prohibiting the speech thereof. If it's the government that's doing that, it's anti-free speech legally and morally. If it's private social media companies with TOS that you don't like, it might be morally bad anti-free speech, but not legally bad and anti-free speech. They're within their legal means.
So even on the policies where you would think Caitlyn Jenner would be to the left, Caitlyn Jenner is actually to the reasonable of Gavin Newsom. So I'm just like, I don't know. This could be another reality series. I have no idea. However, I do.
It's not that difficult. It's like, they're self-hating. It seems like, to be blunt to an extent. It's like, if you want that, because it seems like that's what conservatives want at this point, so even Christians repent of that in Jesus Christ's name, amen. You don't have to be pro-trans or whatever, but, well, I guess pro-trans via, like, you're all on this radical side of trans people, but, like, you should at least be everybody should deserve some dignity, every American should deserve some dignity, every person in general. I think that's a Christian concept. Everybody should get saved, it's also a Christian concept. As well, I'm just saying, repentance is also a Christian concept as well. JD fans forgot all those things. I'm joking. But he's kind of right a little bit on that. It depends. Point is, even if you're from the right, it's like Caitlyn Jenner would be the better pick. It's not like, oh boy. It's like, no. Desperate kind of times come for desperate measures. If I don't want somebody to do some, I'll pick Caitlyn. Or,
I do think it's important to point out that we caught a lot of flack years ago when Bruce became Caitlyn because Caitlyn had become the media's darling. This is them then, and then we'll get to what they're saying now.
There has been overwhelming support and applause for Caitlyn. President Obama wrote, "It takes courage to share your story." Ellen DeGeneres honored her, writing, "My hope for the world is that we can all be as brave as Caitlyn Jenner."
And chop off our
Lady
dogs.
Gaga thanked her.
I apologize for the stupidity of this podcast episode, ladies and gentlemen.
For, quote, "being a part of all of our lives and using your platform to change people's minds," and added, "The beauty on the inside is now also on the outside."
Oh, not anymore.
God bless you and the whole family for sharing it with us. Modern Family star Jesse Tyler Ferguson wrote, hashtag Caitlyn Jenner has truly...
By the way, this is what counts for news.
What a moment.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first...
That's not all the news. Yeah, they're in an echo chamber. I'm sorry.
saw the photos?
I was sitting in the airport yesterday, and it came on. I was like,
Let's
oh
just
my
throw
gosh.
that couch
First of all, I was
away,
like,
guys.
Who is that? And then I realized it was Caitlyn Jenner. She looks amazing.
Yeah, pull that couch out to the curb like bedbug day.
Oh, Lord.
And this is what
You
they were
don't
all
want to
saying.
take that, sir.
If only we could have a contrast to, let's say, exact same programs like The View as to what they're saying.
Yes, you have The Five. You literally have the conservative version of The View. It's on Fox. They're called The Five. Oh gosh. I gotta catch up on the comments. Yeesh, this happens, folks. Alright. And the problem with political conservatives today is that they think that things that are life and death are opinions, or when somebody says something that they can actually cause life and death, / life or death, it's an opinion. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. That, well, the right kind of wants you dead. Specifically for trans people. I'm sorry, that's kind of the case. I'm sorry. At least extreme right-wingers. At least extreme right-wingers. And the left, if you play your cards right with some leftists, they want you dead, especially white people. I'm sorry, that's a fact. I'm sorry. It's kind of in your DNA, online leftists. You gotta change your DNA. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Same thing for the right. Sometimes for both politically and sometimes even physically. Now, of course, those are the extremists of the right and the left. Not all right-wingers and leftists want you dead, but some do not care. I guess don't care. Anybody just saying, be aware of your surroundings. Depending on where you are, you have to be aware of your surroundings, depending on where you are. An opinion is not a lie. Oh boy. Opinions can lie. Your opinion could be based on a lie like voter fraud. Really, this is why I don't want Crowder or Michael Knowles or Ben Shapiro banned, because you see who they are. And because he helps people like me. Again, a man once said, I don't have to do all the work. You do it for me. Exhibit A, Crowder. That quote's from Source the Skeptic. That was a very long time ago. I think that was during the time when he really kind of began using his VTuber model from what I remember. That's when he really changed there, and then there were some models I'm like, okay, that's just a big head, why? And then others that were like, why not just have that model all the time? But I'm not Source Skeptic. Which, by the way, Source Skeptic, not to pressure or anything. If you if you have the time, if you still want to be a guest on my first premiere of my Tonight show, then okay. If not, then maybe ask Vice Rhino. Or if you know somebody else that'll be happy to do that, then yeah. And you already know via the email that I gave you how to contact me. So, again, it's no pressure. I just want to follow up. I'm just following up.
Now that Caitlyn Jenner is, and it shouldn't be a surprise, it just shows how they don't do their due diligence, is an open Republican.
But just days into her campaign, Jenner is now being accused of betraying the transgender community. Over the weekend, she seemed to side with a recent Republican-led wave of legislation to limit transgender rights in at least 31 states.
That means sports.
Caitlyn Jenner is coming under fire for remarks she made.
And another comment, this one I might disagree with myself now, but let's see. Now you're saying a misstatement isn't a lie. You understand a misstatement is a lie. It's a statement that's not the truth. It's not a true statement. As in, it's a lying statement. No, a misstatement is basically, it's a misunderstanding. Your statement is a misunderstanding. You didn't know you said something wrong, so it's not necessarily a lie, because lying is usually intentional. Like a misquote, yeah, you can accidentally lie sometimes. A person might have quotes, but it's not the true quote. As in, it's a misquote, it's a lie, because that's not the true quote. This is not rocket science. This is like what kindergarten level of understanding. No, I disagree with that past me. You were wrong there. No. When you a misstatement and things of that nature, misquote, you're mistaking the quote. You didn't know, because it's a mistake. Some mistakes are purposeful, but some are most of them are accidental. So I will have to disagree with me on that one. These were very old. I had to get rid of the dust for a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? So update. Skill update. I think I'm better. I think I'm highly skilled on some things like guns in a sense, and other things I'm not. Like whatever it might be.
It's a dramatic shift for Jenner, a transgender woman and advocate.
Yeah, so trans people are saying that this will have a huge negative impact because Jenner is an athlete. They think that this could be used as fodder to support the wave of bills targeting young trans athletes that you mentioned.
I think we've had enough of reality stars running, for positions.
Just very egotistical to think like, I
don't know what they mean. They're serious. Oh boy, please stop, please. I apologize for the children.
I can speak out, so sure I can be governor. Like, you need some experience doing it. And I'll say, I
put on lipstick, so sure I can be a chick.
You have to look through a person's life a little bit, and you're basically estranged from most of your kids. So that's not a great track record.
So all of a sudden, character matters.
Yeah,
does now.
Yeah, not genitals. Wow, just idiocy. Kind of respectfully. As a human, fellow human, respectfully, but reputation-wise, not so respectfully. But I think what's respectful for all of us is taking a commercial break. All right, I'll be right back, folks. Alright, this is not just some sponsor or Patreon plug. It's about following Him, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you want to follow Him, if you want to give your life to Christ today, prayer is in the description down below. But if you're a backslidder and you want to rededicate your life to Christ, prayer is in the description down below for you too. But if you want the gift, the free gift that Jesus Christ can only give, Jesus is the only Holy Ghost baptizer. If you want to be baptized in the Holy Ghost with the evidence of speaking in tongues, prayer is in the description down below. It might be way up there, or way down there in the description. Just depends on how long my description is for my show, my podcast. So, yeah, if you want to give your life to Christ, or if you're a backslidder, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues, those prayers are in the description down below. But if you forgot about it, or if you're wrestling with it, and you finally decide, okay, I am going to get saved, or, okay, I am going to rededicate my life to Christ, or, okay, I am going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues, all of those three prayers are in all of my videos. First one to this one, and to the ones to come, all of those three prayers are in the description down below for all of my videos. So if you do forget, or if you are wrestling with it, and you finally decided, okay, I am going to do this, whether it's giving your life to Christ, rededicating your life to Christ, or being baptized in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues, those three prayers are always in the description down below in every video that I make. And we're back.
Let me be clear. So, too, I try and be as unbiased as I can with these because we've had some, not really any close dealings with Caitlyn Jenner behind the scenes, but when Caitlyn was having the reality show, they asked you some of our footage, I think, from one of our shows.
Yeah.
And I think they showed Caitlyn Jenner maybe watching some of it. Here's the thing. Yeah. And Caitlyn Jenner might be on the show. Always welcome on the show.
Yeah.
But when you watch that reality show, Caitlyn Jenner was always a Republican, was always conservative. And on that show, surrounded by these, I remember on a tour bus or some kind of party bus, was surrounded by lesbians and trans people. And they made fun of Caitlyn Jenner for being a conservative and came back with some like catty, which were like, yeah, well, I hope you enjoy your high taxes and killing all the unborn. And was really pissed. Like you could see Caitlyn Jenner didn't really feel at home with those people. You know why? You know why Caitlyn Jenner then had to kind of at one point say I'm disappointed with Donald Trump, but never really said that Caitlyn was a Democrat, because it is a far greater risk in that state and that industry to just acknowledge that you're a Republican than it is to chop off your cock and be Woman of the Year. How's that for freedom of speech? People are more offended that you have an R next to your name in California.
Basically.
You will be made to care.
Yeah, that's incredible. By the way, I love the part where he's like, I think we should have people with some experience. Oh, you mean like somebody who was elected senator and voted president most of the time becoming president? Yeah, that should never happen.
Yeah. And unfortunately for me,
what world is this?
Well, unfortunately, we have DEL now with the right. It's like, if you're loyal, welcome on board. I don't care about your credentials or if you're expert or not. As long as you're loyal, we'll have what we need. Oops, I'm getting a text message. Oh, it's unclear, and I don't recall if that's classified.
I still have my penis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important
it's in Michelle's purse, but, she was it on me.
We should all chop it off. That takes bravery.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Well, it does take bravery.
Not going to lie.
It does. It does take some bravery.
Yeah.
Well, how's your view on circumcision? Just curious.
After you're like, what have I done?
It is irreversible.
Caitlyn Jenner's holding it.
Surgery, I think, yes, is irreversible. Yes, one correct.
Like a Shakespearean,
not like a jacket.
I don't know.
Yeah, this used to be a crime. Ask Lorena Bobbitt. Yeah, it's just ahead of her time.
So hey, I don't know if you know this. Snow White's been canceled now too.
Oh,
yeah. By the way, Snow White. Disney revamped the Snow White ride. I guess it came under fire since Prince Charming was kissing Snow White without consent. This comes from San Francisco Gate.
Listen, yes, I would. I can see Disney doing that. I mean, they made a whole live-action remake of it. I haven't watched it. I will make a review on it as soon as possible, as soon as I can, to get that over with. Goodness. Better than Daily Wire stuff, but, level of critique, they're kind of close. Oh boy. I guess when it comes to just basic morality, I have to give it to Disney, sadly. It's like, actually, no, Disney's quite actually normal moral, unlike the W.Y. Or apparently it's funny to punch somebody between the legs to tell them that you're a man. Apparently that's funny and also a good thing for the protagonist. Okay.
That's a thing.
That makes
their
sense.
critics there, Katie Dow, Julie Tremaine, they said, haven't we already agreed that consent in early Disney movies is a major issue? That teaching kids that kissing, when it hasn't been established if both parties are willing to engage, is not...
I mean, yeah, we should, because that's good. But also, I would say it was a different time, and it maybe not today, but still has some good morals in there a little bit. Make sure you don't have crazy family members that literally want your heart. Now, I know that's the moral of it, but
Okay, it's hard to understand why the Disneyland of 2021 would choose to add a scene with such old-fashioned ideas of what a man is allowed to do. Look,
I
listen.
mean, yeah, they got a point, but it's like, California.
First off, this is absurd, silly. Not to mention, if you're going to choose to be offended, Prince Charming is the least of Snow White's worries with these peeping Toms around.
Playing it safe. I get canceled. Uh-oh. I got canceled. No, something's going on.
True love's kiss.
Yeah, so you don't want to do that.
Right.
No. What are you
wouldn't
supposed
true
to
love
do, by the way?
establish?
When true love established consent, yes, they kind of just met. That was kind of the whole thing about Frozen, which I'm assuming they hate now. I don't know. Who knows? I guess when people say let it go, they're like, sacrilege!
It would.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that he was... I mean, I don't want to say tops Brad Pitt coming over the hill in that Legends of the Fall, but when I watch Prince Charming in there...
Oh,
I
yes.
get teeth marks.
It's charming. And
how do they feel about, like giving somebody CPR and breathing into...
Well, those have been canceled too. Yeah,
That wasn't CPR. Oh gosh. I apologize for the stupidity of this podcast episode. I got a lot of apologies.
I don't know about this.
They go around.
Was canceled.
Oh,
of course, this is no surprise. Canceled the Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah,
that section is gone.
Yeah. Unless it's man to man.
Right. Yes.
Then that's fine.
Well,
add a few leather and chains, and it's just considered role playing.
It's just
and the movie Groundhog Day. You made this point. Well, because it's Phil. He relives the same day over and over again until he gets to bag the chick.
That's true. He does just relive it until he finally has enough lies to bang her.
Exactly.
Build it up. What a beauty.
And then Rain Man is also canceled.
Why? Because he's plays somebody who's mentally challenged?
Because Tom Cruise is mentally challenged.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh,
okay. This was the death of conservative comedy. The tombstone! Get the tombstone. This was it. This was the death. Whatever. Actually, I have the date. I have the tombstone date, actually. May 5th of 2021 is when conservative comedy officially was dead. It has not risen from the dead ever since. Especially now.
Stop.
He really is.
Hey, you're Clint. You don't know what mentally challenged is. You know what you are, Dave Landau? You're
have a moment of cringe for the deceased of conservative comedy.
Why?
You're
Tom?
a jerk. You're a jerk at .com.
Are you wearing lifts?
Yes. Timberlands. I cut them with a Ginsu. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation.
Before we get to the cop lie about it being found in slave patrols and Donald Trump Jr., the Shalvin trial, now it rears its head again. If you recall, during the closing argument, so a juror here might have just actually blown the whole trial. It could be a mistrial. But the prosecutor back then...
The whole trial... Oh, I was thinking that. Never mind. I thought you were saying the whole jury.
Oh, no.
No, the whole. No.
Well, listen, that could happen too. We have no idea. We don't know Joe Biden's whereabouts.
It's a good way to get to your verdict.
So the prosecutor told the jury back then to believe your eyes, to not go based on what you know, the facts. But you know what? It's funny. It's ironic they're banning Disney films because this is just a Disney slogan. Go with your heart, in case you forgot.
This case is exactly what you thought when you saw it first. When you saw that video, it is exactly that. You can believe your eyes. It's exactly what you believed. It's exactly what you saw with your eyes. It's exactly what you knew. It's what you felt in your gut. It's what you now know in your heart.
There's just one morbidly obese juror there.
Doesn't that guy look like an early 40s Germany propaganda poster?
Yes, he does. Yeah, he absolutely does. Or as we know them now, police officers.
Yes, hunters.
So Derek Shalvin's attorney,
they were for Derek Shalvin. Oh gosh.
Nelson.
Yeah.
Audio Wade lookalike, has now filed a petition, the court for a new trial, saying that on the following grounds, the interests of justice, abuse of discretion that deprive the defendant of a fair trial, prosecutorial and jury misconduct, errors of law at trial, and a verdict that is contrary to the law. Now, keep in mind, these errors led to Shalvin being found guilty of manslaughter and murder in the second degree. And in his motion filed with the court, just so you know, Eric Nelson argued that Shalvin didn't get a trial because the court refused to move the trial out of Minneapolis, which obviously is not very fair. There was pretrial publicity was a huge part of it, witness and jury intimidation. The jury was not sequestered. All of these things. Now, here's something that comes up. We talked about the jurors. Brandon Mitchell answered no. This is something, too. He answered no when he was asked, have you or has anyone close to you participated in protests regarding the police abuse of force or police brutality? Because that was relevant when determining a juror for this trial. He said no.
Yeah.
Now, we were just talking earlier about a misstatement, about someone being wrong. Someone can just be inaccurate. Well, look, that's also because sometimes you're playing a game of telephone. This was a question asked of the juror, Brandon, right there. He knew the answer because it was based on his actions taken in the very recent past, and he lied. So Facebook, maybe you can learn this. Maybe we can get a little fact check of Snopes on there, a few Pinocchio.
Yep, got canceled. Now something's going on.
This is a lie. Mitchell attended an August 28th march, Washington, D.C., where George Floyd's brother spoke. Yeah, and he claimed he was just there to honor MLK, but he was actually wearing a "Get Your Knee Off My Neck" T-shirt at the march. There you go.
So he's allowed on Facebook.
Because that makes sense.
In his defense, this is true. You know what his defense is here?
He's a brother who has a deceased brother now.
He was at the march and that was him in the photo. Okay, we're getting close to the truth.
Yeah.
But he doesn't recall wearing nor owning that shirt. It should be noted.
Okay, that's kind of, to be consistent, that's kind of weird there. That's not so good. It's also not so good. Kind of weird that Tulsi Gabbard can't recall a lot of things for the Signal Gate, you know? Not so good on both sides.
You can be precluded from participating in a jury if you're mentally retarded. So either way...
I'm kind of retarded.
I was not there. Really? Is this not you in the picture? I don't remember it. Is that not your shirt? I don't remember wearing that shirt. I have no idea. Sir, if we go into your closet, are you going to be like a cartoon character where it is nothing but that shirt and slacks and a uniform? I don't know. What's a uniform?
I played the fifth.
Look, in fairness, it did come out of a T-shirt cannon.
Lord Trump didn't throw it at you, so technically speaking...
A lot of people had those shirts. There were dozens.
It doesn't count.
Shot in the
Dave,
sorry.
No, I would say that's incredibly irresponsible. It's a good thing I'm wearing the Spartan armor vest, but it sounds to me like someone wants a good old-fashioned shootout. Hey, whoa! Oh, we need a new sound guy.
Jeez.
Oh gosh.
I hope so.
Well, hopefully he's off the books.
Yeah. Oh, he's dead.
Hey, by the way, so this is a wonderful sponsor to the show, Spartan Armor.
Nothing, because I got a comment. This is why you can't always do everything on data, because you can misinterpret, or you can presented perfectly, but it's the intent which is also important, just because, for example, I don't know if this is true or not, but just because there's 15% of black people in law enforcement doesn't mean that there isn't some systemic color bias or systemic racism in the police force. It's just like saying 90% of Germans were Jewish people, so therefore, therefore, the Holocaust is, interesting. No, I don't believe back then that 90% of Germans were actually Jewish, obviously not. I was just proving a point, and I know there is a little bit of a difference, big difference, but the point is that the point is the same, that you're excusing some of the blatant systemic color bias of slashism. You're ignoring that because 15% of black people are in law enforcement. That is what we call ignorance and even pride. I think this might come later on, so I might be actually maybe not trying to catch up. I went a lot more forward. You might talk about that, but at least for me, you gotta know the reasons why there's 50% of people doing this particular race or sex or gender or whatever is doing this thing, or even religion is doing this thing. It might not be systemic, it might just be that those particular people are not in it. I'm not saying it's systemically racist that a lot of rodeo people are not black, because most black people are not rodeo people. It's mostly white people in the South, or West at least. But if it seems like even if black people try to get in it, but it seems like they just don't get it, it might just because they don't get it, or maybe because it might be something systemic. You know? Same thing with basketball and football. Point is, it's the intent of the percentage, not just the percentage itself.
Highly recommend that you guys. Look, you may not know what.
Feel handy with the steel, Dave?
Yeah. So here's something. How many people out there? Has everyone here heard this myth? I wanted to spend some time on this again before we get to Donald Trump Jr.
They are bigger.
Have you heard of the myth that the police were found rooted in racism?
Different myth I'm thinking of.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Rooted in racism. Have you heard it?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard the cops are racist now.
Right. Yes, we've heard that they're racist now.
Started.
I
have heard that they're. Yeah, they did. Well, they were Irish.
Well, actually, what's funny is the police originally were busting the unions quite a bit, which were Irish. And arguments made. They were like, "Oh, we really roughed up too many Irish. Let's get them."
It's called a paddy wagon.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty racist.
Well, we really busted that union trying to just demand fair wages here post-industrial revolution. Well, you know what? Let's put a badge on them, give them a gun. They're none the wiser. Oh, they're idiots. Plus, their brains will scrambled from no potatoes.
Let's call it a billy club. That doesn't seem at all oppressive.
No. I like it. We'll say, hey, you mean this heavy stick you used to beat people like you used to beat my brother to death? No. It's a club named Billy. Yeah. Oh, that sounds like a good time.
I go wash your brains off of it. Yeah. A diddly-dee.
Skiddly-doo-da-dee-dee. Do I get a gun? Well, let's just stick with the Billy Club for now. We'll keep the gun for true white people. So this is something they teach. They're going to be teaching in schools. And this is something.
As your soul died, don't worry, it'll rise again. It'll rise again.
That I know I was taught. And this is something right now that if you run bring up this overlay first. If you run a search, just to give you an idea, if you run a search right now, police force slave patrol, right, are the American police rooted in racism slave patrols? You will not find on YouTube. You will not find on Google. You might find one. I saw one op-ed from the Baltimore Sun. Yeah. Everything else claims that it's true. Way down the list, Snopes said mixed. When Snopes says mixed, you know, and it's a leftist claim, you know that means they're saying, this is pretty much a stretch. Yeah. There is no basis in reality. I want to be really clear, and you need to be able to educate your children who will be indoctrinated with this. Because, look, if you say the police force is racist, it was rooted in racism, then you delegitimize the entire police force. Kind of like you guys want to say.
I mean, in a sense, yes, but we can change it. Yes, it might be degeneralized, but we can change it. We can fix it if that is the case. If it's not the case, then yeah, in that case, I do agree with Crowder on this. I think there was a rift in the universe there, but I think we'll be okay.
Donald Trump wanted to delegitimize the presidency by saying there might be some actual some fraud at play here. You guys want to say there were slave patrols. Then there was a police force. Ergo,
there were mules. Facebook said something. I saw this old lady from Facebook said that it was stolen.
Police, all racist. And
then the whole election of 2020 was stolen, even though it wasn't. Same logic, Crowder. Same logic.
That harms Black Americans, most people who live in urban communities who need the police more than farmers out in the middle of nowhere in Idaho. So, this is a claim. I don't want you to take my word for it that you've heard for many, many years.
That's true. Most Black people do want police officers. We just don't want them to kill our sons and daughters. Which in a lot of cases, depending where you are, that has happened. So you might not have so much of a trust in the man.
And now they want to teach it in schools that it was born out of slavery. Here's a montage for you.
Law enforcement, all built upon them. Policing itself started out as slave patrols. We know that.
Wrong.
And so what we got to do...
Why is it wrong? Please tell us how.
Stop trying to put a Band-Aid on this problem and attack the institution that is perpetuating this culture.
This is not a training issue. This is much more.
The guy on Fox really looks like Superman with alcoholic hepatitis, doesn't he?
Most people don't know that the forefathers of what is our modern day policing were slave patrols.
For much of US history, law enforcement meant enforcing laws that were explicitly designed to subjugate Black people.
That's not that surprising, especially in the South. No, North, I don't know, but South, like, this just makes sense.
America's first law enforcement units were the slave patrols tasked with capturing and returning people who'd escaped from slavery.
Well, you know, it's kind of ironic because the original constables that we had before an official police force were based on Old England law, where they had ones in the system of police over there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but he wants to. You know what? Look.
Yeah, but come on, just bite the bullet.
I know people. We welcome you. Bring us your poor, you're tired, you're hungry, you're mediocre hosts. We understand it. But there is Mexican something that rubs us.
Oh yeah, we got Crowder. That was our. Not even mediocre, just bad host, just bad.
It rubs us the wrong way about a person who sounds like everyone we left telling us how we should do it here.
When we only copied them.
Right.
First place.
For a small part.
And then we get rid of it. Well, for the police, yeah.
So, again, like I said, there's a bunch of censorship at play here. And these are the general claims. It's important because you'll even see, this is what bothers me. You have leftist pseudo-intellectuals who make these arguments. And then you have people on the right. You have conservative pseudo-intellectuals. And I mean pseudo-intellectuals who say, well, this isn't really widespread. This is a fringe idea. No, it's not. It's not only no longer a fringe idea, they have a forced captive audience with your children. And then in university, 16 years, Joe Biden wants now. Teach this to kids and then make sure that taxpayer dollars fund that kind of education for 16 years. Let's go through this claim by claim. The most popular claims, if you see that I've missed one or you have some questions, we'll take them in chat later on Mug Club or just submit them, comment below. Which ones you think we've missed? Because it's hard to kind of put them.
And just quickly, we did math wrong yesterday. It's 17 years. Kindergarten, 1 through 12, plus 2, plus 2.
So you also saw the tweet?
Yeah, I did see the tweet. They're like, you guys suck at math.
I admitted it. He goes, what's the problem here? I said, we're not good at math.
Yeah.
Which was kind of the whole point of the segment.
Yeah, really.
Which kind of like we're not equal at math.
It's kind of surprising that we gave you the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
We always take the most conservative numbers here, by the way, because we get conservatives. I got fact-checked on Detroit when I did a segment on Detroit saying their unemployment is 27.5%. This is
I remember that. Yeah.
And someone said, again, a pseudo-intellectual on the right saying, actually, the fact is, Stephen, it's 28.3. Oh, great. You're right. I saw that one in USA Today. I picked the most conservative source. And depending
because, of course, they're telling the truth.
Where someone's birth date is when you're talking about preschool through college, it could be 16 years or 17 years.
Yeah,
it's 17.
Well, they opened an Arby's. 3 people got a job that day. Actually, it's more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So let's go to some of these claims here that police were formed specifically to catch runaway slaves.
At least in the South, that would make sense because the South had, at least the Deep South. Now, not all the South was necessarily pro-slavery, but they did care about their good old South. If I'm correct, parts of Virginia and things that would be considered not so deep South, like Louisiana, didn't really care much about slavery, but they were still abetting and somewhat agreeing with the institution of slavery, because if I'm correct, they were still having slaves there. So, at least for me, I can say, at least for the Deep South, if not most of the South, parts of the police force, parts of the system, which I think have been taken away, of the mechanism of rounding up slaves, we know that doesn't really exist anymore. That's not really a thing, but maybe some components of the mechanism might still be there, which we need to gut out, if that's the case. And even if it was the case that it's gutted out, there might still be some effects of it. How can we mitigate those effects? You won't find this on left-wing or right-wing sources. You'll find it here on the JTF Show podcast, by the way. I'm just saying. Alright, that nuance there. So, especially Deep South, they did have most likely some type of slave patrols. Maybe not possibly private police, but maybe not so private, because police officers were also somewhat involved in the racist and demonic systems of slavery back then as well, at least for the Deep South. Until the North basically became the nation's police, and then later on, but then you have segregation and things of that nature, so it might be a little bit more complicated. But let's hear the most likely somewhat wrong right-wing version from Steven Crowder.
The structure of this country, whether we want to admit it or not, is based on racism.
Did someone hook a battery up to the sink before he came onto the show?
I'm sorry, I forgot. He's not going to do it yet. I'm sorry. I apologize for the children.
Slave trade, and the country was built on the backs of black folks who made this country as great as it is, whatever that means. And until we recognize that, and specifically in policing, it was built on slave catching. That's the institution of policing was built on slave catching.
Now, the only legitimate excuse for Kamal Bell, comedian, by the way, you always know they're a comedian when they have to remind you, looking that way on that show is if immediately before, and he said, yeah, I'm ready for my head, I just got to wash my hands.
We gotta talk to Samson.
So, okay, that's the basis of it. Look, God. This is one thing, too. We're going to do a segment.
My thoughts exactly. Get on with it, you.
Tomorrow on DC statehood. Does it pass a sniff test? And what do I mean, sniff test? You go, hold on a second. Okay, you start off with a macro view. They're claiming that this is why the police exist. With DC statehood, I hadn't done a ton of research on it recently, because I remember the first time I looked it up, people were saying, why is DC the only place that it's not a state? And I went, that's a good question. Why is it? And I looked it up, and I said, to be impartial. That makes sense. That completely makes sense as to why it would be different. Right. It's congruent with the other reasons that it's unique. Same thing here. You go, hold on a second. They say that it was created for, but wait, sniff test. Do other countries have police? Have there been police forces? Yes. Every society, ancient Rome.
Okay. What sniff test? This is not. Well, okay, this is not empirical. This is just. Well, hold on a second. Weren't there other police people? So if they didn't have it, why would we have it? You're joking, right, Crowder? This cannot be your empirical analysis on. Okay. It
Rome,
might be,
Augustus
folks.
Caesar created a police
Buckle
force.
up.
In England, in the 13th century, they formed a body of constables and justices to keep the peace, which we
And it might be crazy, but in a very slave-loving states in parts of a country, they might have some type of a police force that may or may not be and considering rounding up slaves and be proud of doing it. What? I think we all need a break. Here's a word from my sponsors. My sponsors are you guys, those who support me on PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Man, is this really your debunked of slave patrols? Come on now. Seriously, this is it. This is the best you guys got. Come on.
Mimicked here in the United States. Pretty similar. I think it was 1630s is when we did it. And also, by the way, today, every non-white society still has police forces in one form or another. Granted, it might be Coney. But you take what you can get. The point is, are all these African countries racist? Are all these Middle Eastern countries racist? It doesn't pass that initial sniff test. What were we about to say there, dude?
No, is this based because there's chain gangs now? I mean, in the 50s. If we played the song Chain, I just want to hear the song Chain.
We really got to the heart of the matter for you, Dave, didn't we?
Come on,
Yeah,
everybody.
it's a good song.
Working
Here's the thing.
the system of constables.
Watched a lot of these too, and I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I
yet.
haven't
So you're
seen
right.
it
If they did do it, then that's
we don't want another 16
from Brett Baer to anybody else that we saw there from CNN or MSNBC said one word like, well, there's
to be fair, I don't know if some of them did down the line or corrected after the segment.
I've watched a lot of these too, and I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
yet. So you're right. If they did do it, then that's
we don't want another 16-17 scandal in our midst, folks.
Camabell, or whatever his name is.
It's 16 Gate.
Didn't get changed. He didn't get challenged.
No, he didn't. Well, and also, so we had the system of constables.
Better than 18
justices.
Gate.
And then the first modern police department, it was created in Boston in 1838, immediately followed by New York City. I believe it was in Albany, Chicago, Philadelphia, a lot of Northeast places where slavery was outlawed. So again, this is something they'll make the claim. Well, look at these slave patrols. Sure, they existed, but to try and say that the Minneapolis Police Department today is based on some kind of a slave patrol from the antebellum South doesn't pass the sniff test.
That I can see doesn't pass the sniff test. So I would agree there, at least for the North. I don't think you can say there were slave patrols, but especially in the South, the antebellum South, deep South, you might have a point there. So I'll give it that. That is actually empirical analysis.
So then we changed into a modern police force, organized, sort of bureaucratic police departments. They were formed specifically in urban areas, American cities, for the purpose of reducing crime, often mob violence against blacks in a post-Civil War era. And look, if you want to make the argument that there was quite a bit of union busting that came up from the cops back then because they were trying to strike and they wanted to maintain the economic status quo, sure, you could make that argument. You can't make the argument that it's based in slave patrols. Something else, too, that's pretty important to note. Today, over 15% of police departments are black. They have 15% of police officers are black.
Which he made a comment all about that. Point is, it depends on the intent of the percentage and why that percentage is there in the first place and why you're using it. Crowder, it seems like he's using it to somehow debunk the notion that the police department is racist. If there's only 15% of black people in it, like, now that doesn't mean it's 15 people. This might just be 15 out of the millions of police officers, but that's still like 15%. That's a very small margin. That's like at least hundreds of thousands, maybe a million. Yeah, I'm not getting all the population and numbers right at the moment, but that's why I like the part of education, folks. But boy, kind of, sort of, yeah. But more of the point is that. This doesn't really prove your point, really. It might prove the point of systemic racism, like 15%. Why is that? It's mainly most likely because of the cultural enmity with police officers and black people, because the police officers were didn't have control of their guns, of their trigger fingers. It seems, and other things.
Higher portion than the general population.
Depending on where you are.
Something percent.
Yeah.
That's over 20% increase of their representation in the general population. So
that's nice, but again, this kind of just proves the point of the other side. That there's still certain problems that we have to fix systematically.
Apparently they didn't get the memo.
Or at least culturally.
Oh.
Well, they've had Tom screamed in their face for the last couple of years.
Or in Tim Scott's case, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Uncle Tim. Not even creative.
No, not at all. That was pretty lazy.
And by the way, this is something too. Who does it harm? Police are far more necessary in large urban areas today where who's likely to be the victim of black crime? Black people.
Yeah.
Right? Police interaction.
And there's a reason why for that. It's somewhat systemically racist via the drug war and other things. And somewhat of a tribalism, if not spiritually, a tribalistic-like spirit, because most of us most likely were from descendants of slaves, and those were from Africa.
In rural areas, they're significantly lower than in, say, inner-city Detroit, right? This is something, again, you want to take them away from these neighborhoods? Okay, and we'll get back to how most black people feel about that. Statistically, right now, not going to be a white person speaking for black people, because then I would be like the former Vice President Joe Biden. Here's another one that people say, okay, well, all right, fine. So maybe it's not based on the slave patrols, if you look at it, but still, slave patrols were a thing, right? Do any of us deny that?
Yes, they were a thing, and I think he's about to say they weren't, oh boy.
Those existed? That's the other argument they'll sort of walk you down the trail to. Clip.
But the fourth area, which is for 400 years has been a problem in our country, racial relations and the role of police in that with the original slave catchers, then during segregation we enforced that. That is still the unresolved issue.
Yeah, well, that walking anti-Semitic cartoon is off base.
He was probably there.
He was probably there.
Firsthand.
So, look,
I sent him back.
Slave-catching militias did exist in the South, okay?
Right.
Of course. This is absolutely true.
Policing, that's definition policing. That's it. It has nothing to do with the actual police or what it is now. It's just a word that can be attributed to both things. It doesn't mean that the actual force is based on that.
No, exactly. And that's
true, and that's how language works. Michael Knowles doesn't know about that. Oh, boy.
Also, when you look at their realms of authority, very different. So, slave-catching militias, they had nothing to do with policing systems that both sort of predated them or the official policing system thereafter. Now, there are different people will claim some different dates. The most accurate that I can find is the first slave patrols appeared in the South in 1704. I believe it was one of the Carolinas. I don't know. You have it in the overlay. One of you guys can let me know. This was after the Civil War. This was the Republicans' Reconstruction era, right? The Republican North, who won, forced the Democrat South, who lost, to acknowledge to help pass the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, which made slavery, therefore slave patrol.
And also, by the way, because I don't know if you catch that, I know what he's trying to say, but guess what? Most Democrats back then were conservative. Who are most people in the Republican Party now? Conservative. Who switched? Racist conservatives switched to the Republican Party. That is a fact. So, people try to use this... just tell them, wait, who were they? They were conservative. Okay, who's conservative now? Okay, who made the switch? Oh, so you can't use that anymore.
Illegal.
Right? Just the Carolina colonies back then.
Carolina colonies back then. I knew it started with a C, though. Just like the White House. By contrast, this is important to note, the police force, they still existed.
Yeah.
Slavery outlawed, the police force existed, and even included black Americans. In 1867, African Americans, they were appointed to the police department.
That was most likely maybe because, the North kind of controlled the South a little bit for obvious reasons. That was during Reconstruction, and I would say most likely slave patrols and police officers, at least in the deep South and deep Belgian South, had some connections. They most likely shook hands. Well, they were chaining up a black person. You know what I'm saying? Like, they most likely, maybe they were somewhat separate, but most likely kind of had leeway for both. Like, yeah, I'll ignore this very illegal thing, because, you're part of the you're part of the lost cause, buddy.
You may not know this. Selma, Alabama.
Wow.
Kind of iconic there.
Unbelievable.
So this is important for people to understand that the official American police force, now their job was to enforce the laws. Part of that was breaking up slave patrols.
Yeah.
There was an American government waged war against these slave patrol militias, including, by the way, the United States Navy engaged in anti-slave patrol. They fought slave patrols. They fought slave patrols. There. And you can't find this online. You can bring up that overlay. That's from Thomas Sowell. I had to go back to a hard copy of Thomas Sowell's book.
And find it?
I could not find it. I had to go into one of those.
Well, we're really crying over Thomas Sowell not finding his book. I mean, it's Thomas Sowell.
Book websites. I think it might have been Goodreads or Audible. Yeah. Type in Thomas Sowell, Police Slave Patrol, U.S. Navy to find it.
Oh my Thomas Sowell, that's a white man?
Well, he's some call him Jim. So...
White guys don't got soul.
White guys do not got soul. It's the melanin. Just ask Nick Cannon. Apparently, they don't get the comedy, though.
Oh, that's true.
It's just Nick Cannon. I don't want to tar and feather an entire group of very funny black people just because Nick Cannon is a festering bag of talentless shit.
Oh, I just thought he was the black Ryan Seacrest.
Ryan Seacrest is likable.
Well,
somewhat. True. So, this is also something...
Again, you're the one to talk about. Like, come on. Really?
Slave patrols, not only were they not official police, the United States...
Okay, they were legally non-official police, but in all the sense of the word, they were basically officially part of a police group in the South, because that's kind of obvious. That, like, do I need to explain?
There's never been slave patrol. Modern policing departments, like we said, they existed to fight slave patrols. Now, I understand there were some obviously vigilante groups, the KKK, right? These places exist. They stuck around after the war, but since this was...
Which, by the way, in the South, at least until like the 80s at least, police officers sometimes ignore certain domestic terrorism from the KKK in the Deep South because they kind of agreed with them. You know, that's not that surprising. So again, maybe not straight up the police force, but by all means part of the police force. Like, come on.
Illegal. They passed, Congress passed the KKK Act of 1871, and martial law allowed for the arrest of the KKK in South.
And yet they're still here today. Maybe some police officers who might be even part of the KKK, which I wouldn't be surprised in the Deep South, might have infiltrated and maybe became part of the big dogs, and maybe, you know, maybe tweak the system a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm also saying that might not be the case either. It might be possible.
Here's something else that is important. You just talked about the policing definition. Now, and I know I'm getting a little nerdy here, but this matters. Comparing modern police to slave patrols is like comparing the FBI to mall security guards. Slave patrols never had the authority to do what modern police do, right?
But mall cops and the FBI might work in tandem because they both have a similar goal. So back then, police officers and slave patrol people might have a similar goal, so they're basically part of the same thing. Now, of course, obviously the modern police system, or at least modern police of today, obviously have no togetherness, if you will, for slave patrols at all. Obviously not. But especially when slave patrols were a thing, they were basically an extension of the police force, or at least of the idea of the police force that they couldn't say out loud, but they hold to their beliefs. They kind of agreed with slaveholders, with slave patrols, because they're racist.
They didn't give traffic citations. They didn't respond to domestic disputes from free people. They existed solely to retrieve slaves to their Southern Democrat slave owners.
Yeah.
They didn't have
who are conservative, by the way, and guess what? They switched. Again, don't let them use that tactic, folks.
Over non-slaves. It's much more like a private security firm. Their main...
Somewhat, but again, even private security firms might work in tandem with the public security firm because they both have a similar ideological goal. So they, technically speaking, work together. This isn't hard math here. 1 + 1 = 2.
Main functions where I have this here to make sure chase down, return to the owners runaway slaves, to provide a form of organized terror to deter slave revolts, and to maintain summary justice outside of the law. These were their roles, to act as though that's the same as a cop saying, "Hey, you know what? You were going too fast."
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, you can't beat your wife." They never had that authority.
Weren't they hired by the plantation owners?
Yes.
Yeah. So they were like.
And I'm assuming that the plantation owners also somewhat paid the salary of the police too, at least in the deep antebellum itself. So they both had the similar person paying them. Funny how that works. Like.
What of the dog to bounty hunter? They like kind of
surprising
they were either Democrat racist plantation owners themselves,
right,
who formed these militias, or they outsourced private sort of security militias, sometimes for profit.
So, I mean, they were a private security firm.
Effectively, yeah.
When you really think about it.
They were.
This is the laziest argument that I've seen. By the way, when I was doing
this is the laziest debunk that I've seen.
On this, the better argument that I saw, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't made against anti-capitalists, is that actually business owners were more in favor of a police force to make sure that you had a really working class and people to buy your products, not to stop crime.
No,
they weren't necessarily even worried about that. I was like, oh, you can say the big corporations did it, and they suck.
And you know what else? This is something I can't say is necessarily. I can't say that this is 100% fact, that this is the reason why, but you can look at the trends and why did they include black members in their police force early on when there was still racism going on. Big part of that is
most likely because for some they were trying to assimilate because they realized that they kind of lost the culture war a little bit, that they were still trying to be like, hey, as long as black people are at their place, we can in a sensible way work together. Possibly, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to right the wrongs justly, but also maybe they were just trying to say, listen, okay, we have to allow black people if they're qualified, but we gotta make sure they're put in their place, basically.
Because, again, think about this in the time historically. Freed black people now, a lot of them migrating north, they now have purchasing power.
Yeah.
And so that's important to the economy. And so you want to make sure that they're not the victims of racism in these communities, even though slavery was outlawed. So it was important. That's why they actually wanted to make sure to sort of ingratiate themselves with the black community.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that those
slavery being outlawed doesn't mean that racism was outlawed. Like, come on.
people weren't racist. Doesn't mean that there are no police officers who are racist. Let's move on to the next argument. You hear this a lot from Kamal Bell. Modern prisons, this is another claim, are just an extension of slavery, right? You see the slave patrol.
Well, to an extent, literally, I think in the Constitution, it basically, if I'm correct, does say that the form of slavery that's allowed is the prison system, and private prisons aren't really the best thing because they're for profit, they're not for system of justice. Like, 1 plus 1 equals 2, Crowder. 1 plus 1 equals 2.
That just turned the modern police into effectively slave catchers. It's cute. Here you go.
13th Amendment to
I wouldn't go that far, but...
the Constitution makes it unconstitutional for someone to be held as a slave. In other words, it grants freedom to all Americans. There are exceptions, including criminals.
There's a clause, a loophole.
If you have that embedded in the structure, in this constitutional language, then it's there to be used as a tool for whichever purposes one wants to use it.
To an extent, yes, but of course the Constitution has its limits. I would have to actually look at the amendment itself, but the point is, it's just not necessarily so good, but
an official...
criminals aren't so good, so should they be treated good? That's the question, isn't it?
That's like Orange is the New Crap over there, I guess. I can't believe that's a Netflix. Did they pick someone off the street who looked exclusively bored?
Obama's
I
on
have
the board.
seen the documentary. Yeah. It's a little. They definitely put it together in a way where it is jarring.
Oh, of course they do. So, look, this is again the sniff test to act as though prisons. And look, there's a disproportionate amount of black people in prisons right now in the United States.
Thanks, Kamala.
Right.
And also thanks to Joe Biden, but also some... not thanks to Trump, but now possibly thanks to Trump, because if you have a tattoo that might represent a certain gang, you might get deported. I'm sorry. Bye-bye. Oopsie-doopsie. Sorry, we're mistaken.
Yeah, Kamala. Maxine Water, you look at some of these people and how they actually were fighting against the crack epidemic. They were more aggressive because they saw
White
they
boy
were
Rick,
destroying their communities.
Serving nonviolent offender.
Yep. This is so insulting to members of the black community that, they're just being rounded up. No, look, you commit crimes, you go to jail, regardless.
Not all the time, though, especially depending where you are, it might be quite corrupted. I'm sorry, Crowder, but that's reality.
So anyways, now I understand what everyone here agrees that nonviolent drug offenders should not be going to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ever.
And I think we can then get into the history of the drug war and what happened. Sure, absolutely. But this idea that today police exist simply to be modern slave catchers, like they're the dog catcher and all dogs go to heaven, or insert whatever Disney lady in the tramp. It's not true. Again, not to mention that how many cops are just 15% of them are black themselves right now.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Important to note, again, they didn't get the memo, but let's look at the crime rates. Why are there more blacks in prisons right now in the United States? In 2018, blacks made up 53% of homicides, 60% of robberies in the United States, despite being 12% of the population.
Yes, and that's a bad thing, and we should try to figure out why that's the case, because for a lot of them, poverty leads to crime. Not crime leading to poverty, or let's say it like this. Poverty leads to crime, which leads to poverty, because of the crime, which leads to crime, because of poverty. It's circular. Crime, sometimes poverty equals crime, which equals poverty, which equals crime, etc., etc., etc. So maybe trying to alleviate the poverty might alleviate the crimes, because then you won't really have a motivation sometimes. We all know the musical Les Medibus, or whatever it's called, he just stole a loaf of bread. Even though he was hungry, but, he still broke blood. It's like, it might have been a good thing back then, because this is before, during, and after the French Revolution, so maybe, Jean Valjean, and, something pretty good. 24601. It did something good. Okay. And so we just have to figure out, okay, why is it so many black people going to jail? Maybe because we have a culture that might promote that. Why do we have that? It can't be for race realism, because that's just not true. It can't be IQ, because that doesn't work. Maybe outside forces kind of created some type of situation. The drug war, for instance, and so we have what we have today. Possibly. Or maybe people didn't actually do the crime, but since they're black, they don't want them to be in cages again, because some people want that. And maybe sometimes they get hired to police force, and maybe sometimes they might be in high positions of power in that police force. Possibly.
Well, they're still 23% less likely to be shot than whites by police.
But look at the basis of it. It's that if you're going to send people, you can already, it's for cheap labor, right? We can already send that labor overseas to real slaves. So we're not going to do it over here in America.
Right. Yes, exactly.
They're doing it for us over.
They are. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, and it's kind of like the voter ID thing. It basically, and we've had people on this show that were black make the point that it's that black people are too stupid to get an ID. Really? That's what you're saying by this?
Right.
You're saying...
Yeah, that was a little racism of low expectations. Like, we can't get one. Well, the argument is that, which it's a very, very weak argument, but the argument is that some people might not be able to have ID or go to a DMV, maybe because they don't have it there on purpose because it's predominantly black. That might be the case, may not be the case. Possibly, and they want as many people to vote as possible because, like in 2020, we see that a Democrat won because more people came out to vote. The Republican won in this case for 2024 because less people voted. Which Republicans know that, and they don't like that, and, well, they basically ignore their principles now, so it wouldn't be surprising for them to have actual restricting voting laws like the SAFE Act, or as I call it, the Republicans Against Women Act, because that's what it basically is, and Trans People Act, but women sadly will get more of the attention than trans people. Sadly. So it's a lot more complicated than you think.
Saying that black people commit crimes because there's a police force that exists to get them and put them in prison?
You have
stupid.
black people
That's stupid.
right now in this country right now. And unfortunately, a big part of it is because they've been lied to. I've talked about this in the past, and I don't ever want to use the word victim, but you have leftist propagandists. You have the George Soros, the James Camerons of the world. You have the CNN, the MSNBCs. And these are people who are dyed-in-the-wool leftists. This is what I've talked about with Change My Mind, where you cannot change their mind at all. And so you have to make an example of them, like we're trying to do right now, to make sure that you...
Oh, yeah, making examples of college students who are not ready to prepare to debate because they're too busy with doing college stuff, but they do want to voice their opinion, and so you loaded with facts, which may or may not be true or accurate, or they might be quite biased, and you win. And this is my comment for that. Finally, well, he finally admitted that that his Changed My Mind is, well, garbage, trash, and is useless, and he didn't say that, but pretty much that's what he was saying. He was saying that change his mind is, for not changing minds, is to basically do nothing. Change my mind is not what it says. Like they said with the police and stuff like that. Words, different meaning. His change my mind is just a distraction. Because if he just said, I'm not going to change people's minds, I'm just going to do X, Y, and Z, people will not go to talk with him.
You understand the truth. And then there are people who buy into it. And those people aren't actively engaged in a lie. Unfortunately, they have been lied to. And that's many black Americans right now who believe that the police force is rooted in the slave patrol and it's open season to hunt black people. And so what happens?
In some places it might be, actually, so. Maybe
you end up with more violence, you end up with more riots, you end up with more revolts, and who does that hurt most? Again, black people in their communities. Keep in mind, too, they commit crimes at a higher rate. It's a statistical reality. YouTube, Facebook, fact check it all you want. Send them to Snopes for all I care. Just make sure you send them a hard copy of Thomas Sowell's books. How about that for balance? Let's just move on here. Look, this is what happens. This is what happens as an example. We have a very clear example this week. Of what happens when you don't have police. This is the end game in black areas. So here's a police call, I think, right? We have a police call of officers trying to help black citizens in the Floyd Autonomous Zone. Instead, the woman, who I believe was of color, we don't have the exact report right now, but that's what it seems to be, was bleeding out and has to be moved blocks away because the Black Lives Matter activists and their Antifa toadies refusing to allow the police entry. Here's a
If I'm correct, they famously blocked an ambulance that was trying to help somebody. I think that was in Chaz. I don't know, don't remember. Or it was in at least, I think, either Chicago or Detroit, which, yes, that's bad. That's all bad. Rioters of the Capitol, January 6th, also bad. Plain and simple.
Bone-chilling police call.
321, is it possible to have her move at least a block away, maybe 38 and 10?
She is bleeding and cut everywhere, but we'll call her back and ask her to move a block away.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad that white people are able to speak for the black community.
Unbelievable. I almost would say get the SWAT truck out and literally say, guys, in 3 seconds, we're coming through this area.
Yeah.
If your body has not left the space, it will be ejected.
We're talking about a riot and insurrection on January 6th. You have had for months people being shot, bleeding out in autonomous zones, which, by the way, is treason. Okay? Is treason. It's anarchy. Autonomous zones have been shot. Multiple people. That woman's bleeding out. The police are too afraid to enter, and not a peep because someone wore a Viking hat into the halls of...
Yes, he just wore a Viking hat, guys. It was just protesters who sadly, mistakenly, peaceful protesters who sadly, mistakenly, blocked an ambulance. Come on, guys. Calm down. Right-wingers, seriously, can we not downplay January 6th in the summer of 2019, if I'm correct, or what was it, 2021?
Of Congress?
Exactly, because 800...
Can we not call it a summer of love or a day of love? Can we
decided to get crazy out of 200,000?
Where somebody did get killed.
Yeah.
But just...
And it was a...
Yeah, and somebody did get killed. Others did get killed in January 6th. It's not then and there, but I guess that doesn't count. Yeah, it's pathetic. It's disturbing.
Yeah. Right, one of the people who was protesting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think we'll have a march about that at some point. Right?
Yeah, we will have a
probably.
It's coming. And here's something else. So we have the sniff test in the beginning.
Scooter march.
Does it make sense that police? Wait, are we the only country with police? Are we the only country with slaves? No. So the beginning, right?
So maybe therefore, what? Actually, therefore, Rome or England might have also had certain slave patrols that might have worked with the official police force because they had their ideas. I mean, especially in Roman Greek. Come on. Seriously?
Go from A to Z. Okay. A doesn't pass the sniff test. But now, let's use another.
The sniff test is flawed.
Rationalizing technique here, okay? The Socratic method. So let's say that today, let's go with their premise, right? And that's their endgame, no police, you see what happens. Okay. If the government were...
The radical online left. Because they all want communes because they believe that's the best way, even though that's not. That's why they're radical.
Outright racist and hell-bent on subjugating disenfranchised citizens. Let's say specifically of an individual race.
Yeah.
Let's say black people. What would be an important safeguard against it? The government wants to use the cops as a roundup force for a specific group of people. What would be something important to prevent that from happening?
The police?
Close. Second Amendment. Yeah. Second Amendment. There you go. Well, good trigger control. Dave can take some notes. Now, the second... This is...
in hell.
And by that, what happens is he shoots himself and then he wakes up in 2021.
I'm just going to hear tomorrow in a blow chair.
Still here.
Oh, no. This is hell.com.
Oh, boy. I think we all need a little bit of a break from this. Here's a commercial break, folks. I'll be right back. The cringe, folks, the cringe. Alright, this is not just some sponsor or Patreon plug. It's about following Him, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you want to follow Him, if you want to give your life to Christ today, prayer is in the description down below. But if you're a backslider and you want to rededicate your life to Christ, prayer is in the description down below for you too. But if you want the gift, the free gift that Jesus Christ can only give, Jesus is the only Holy Ghost baptizer. If you you want to be baptized in the Holy Ghost with the evidence of speaking in tongues, prayer is in the description down below. It might be way up there, or way down there in the description. Just depends on how long my description is for my show, my podcast. So, yeah, if you want to give your life to Christ, or if you're a backslider, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues, those prayers are in the description down below. But if you forgot about it, or if you're wrestling with it, and you finally decide, okay, I am going to get saved, or, okay, I am going to rededicate my life to Christ, or, okay, I am going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues. All of those three prayers are in all of my videos. From the first one to this one and to the ones to come, all of those three prayers are in the description down below for all of my videos. So if you do forget, or if you are wrestling with it, and you finally decided, okay, I am going to do this, whether it's giving your life to Christ, rededicating your life to Christ, or being baptized in the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues, those three prayers are always in the description down below in every video that I make. Fix all the necklaces that I have, you know. Let's continue this
Well,
madness.
is like, I should have thought of that. Devil just says, hey, you're going to .hate Wednesdays. So,
I like it.
But the left wants you to believe that the Second Amendment was used to keep slaves. This is something you'll see again. If you type in Second Amendment slaves in Google, if you type in Second Amendment in YouTube, you will find nothing but Second Amendment used to keep slaves. Here's what's in.
So, before we get, I'll be able to finally catch up to my comments. Alright, so, Crowder, what happens? Okay, what happens, Crowder? What happens if I'm getting this right? If a government placed a law enforcement to specifically round up particular people of a race, what would you do to stop that? Now, I didn't get it at first, but now I do. But this is what I said, maybe bringing people and voting people in office of that government to maybe defund that law enforcement or maybe reform that law enforcement. Let's see what Crowder answered. Let's see Crowder's answer, and we know it was Second Amendment. I didn't get specifically what he was saying, but I do agree. It's like, yeah, somewhat, but also what I said is also true to an extent. Maybe you do, bring people who in power who can vote and be in that government to destroy that part of the system. Not everything, but at least that part. Crowder's answer is the Second Amendment. So not doing the more rational, more logical thing that I said, but just the Second Amendment, but yet you're against the violence that BLM and Antifa do that you claim. Because for them, it feels like the police are that, or the government is bad, so they will use force. But you don't like that because it's not your group, in a sense. To an extent, if I'm getting the logic right, if you think that's the case, then how come what they're doing is wrong? I guess because they're doing it for the wrong reason, at least. That might be the case. It's possible. It's possible.
What's interesting about that, not only is that not accurate, it's the exact opposite of the truth. So I found this interesting in colonial America, basically the late antebellum South, right, where slave patrols would have existed.
Yeah.
They were the first places to implement modern gun laws. And I knew this before I started doing research on this yesterday. I knew they were the first place to implement modern gun laws. So I was writing this segment out. I didn't know that there were the Virginia Slave Code made disarmament of blacks mandatory to prevent insurrections. So
here's the thing, though, because we're going to do the same logic. Okay, here's the sniff test. Or people saying you can't have a gun because of your race? Well, no, they're not saying that. I think most of them with the gun laws, they're trying to say, hey, maybe this particular weapon, maybe or maybe not used for war, should not be just willy-nilly to anybody who can just shoot a school with a lot of children in it. Because we care about our children, actually. In and outside of the womb. That's the point of pro-life, but, not anymore, I guess. video on that topic there. Or the other argument is that if you, or at least for red flag laws, like, hey, maybe you're not stable to use this tool. Like, you might not be stable to drive a car anymore because of your condition. Same thing for a gun. If you want to defend yourself, that is tough, but if you're not in a state to use that tool, you can't use the tool. Like, maybe have somebody who can defend them, who can use that tool of a gun, or can use the tool of driving a car. Because that's what you have to do sometimes. So, if we're doing Stephen Crowder's logic, which is somewhat correct with snip tests, my snip test isn't flawed because it's just like, I don't think anybody is saying we should get rid of guns for black people, specifically black people, to not have an insurrection. So, by that logic, this doesn't check out, Crowder. By your logic.
So I knew that it was a roundabout way. So this is one thing we talk about quite a bit, right? We talk about Democrat laws, Jim Crow in the South, right? We talk about them trying to infringe on the civil Democrats.
Again, conservative Democrats who switched to Republicans because Republicans are now more of their side. So again, don't let them trick you with that nonsense there. It's like, yes, Democrats used to be conservative racists, but who switched? Who's now the conservative racist? Who did they vote for now? Republicans. I wonder why. There seemed to be a switch. Interesting.
Democrats, civil rights. We talk about them sort of disenfranchised literacy tests. Okay. All from
Yes, true. And to be consistent with myself, just because, in the conservative viewpoint, by the way, just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it's happening now. That doesn't mean that these gun laws are trying to sit with black people, but if they're using the same mechanisms as the systemic racism of anti-gun laws for black people, then yes, you need to change that mechanism of banning guns. I don't think you should ban guns at all, obviously. But that's why we have red flag laws. That's not really a ban on a gun, it's a ban on a particular person having the gun, not the gun itself, which makes more sense.
From Democrats, by the way. Why don't we talk about the specific targeting in this country by removing firearms exclusively from people of color? And by the way, today let's just change that to extremist. Today let's just change that to mental health issues. You took a Xanax, you can't have a gun.
Republicans.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what it was with the red flag laws, which makes sense, but he's against any limitations of the thing that has limitations on it, the Constitution.
Change it to Republicans.
Yeah. That's really
How is this a problem?
Sure, you can use that wording, but honestly, snip test, that's not happening. That's just an exaggeration, like the exaggeration of saying that now prisons are just trying to slave rounduppers at this point, which would be an exaggeration, at least to them, which I think, to an extent, I agree. It's called consistency.
Oh, once Lady Antebellum, the band changed their name to Lady A.
Well, they stole it from a black lady
and
who
then
got
sued
pissed.
a black lady.
It was all.
I thought that fixed everything.
It did, yeah. So did yeah.
Did you see that? The Lady A was like, "That was my name first, bitch." Like, we can't get it right.
Exactly.
There's actually Chief Justice Justice Taney ruled in Dredd versus Scott. I am the law. 1D Dredds that blacks could not be considered citizens because it would give them the right to keep and bear arms.
Unbelievable.
So again, it was often used as the final remaining measure of targeting and subjugating Southern blacks.
I feel stupid about my answer because I had a gun in my hand.
Right? You know who else was
feel powerful with your answer.
Really fond of disarming populations that they wanted to oppress?
I think you're going to Hitler?
Oh, yeah. Well, Pol Pot, too. So.
I think also Stalin and Mao and yeah, and it's interesting. And also, didn't Stalin try to do something with Jewish doctors because it was anti-Semitic? Something happened to a French doctor that I think said something bad about Trump, so therefore he was deported. Sounds so familiar, doesn't it? Ooh, that's not good, isn't it? Ooh.
Cut from the same
There's
cloth.
probably more.
There's probably quite a few.
Lenin.
I mean,
If you think Palestine
there's
was going on with that as a genocide, deport it.
I don't know about Mussolini was a sad figure.
Yeah, he really was.
He was a patsy.
He was a really, really.
Didn't he just end
I
up
don't like
like hung
political
and spit
opponents
on?
in my state.
Yeah, that's not really a good way to go out.
Nope.
No, he was
Not a
on the
big
wrong
fan.
side. So,
Not a big fan.
Now,
David
this is something that's
Carradine had it
important.
more.
This is something important here.
Death.
All right,
I'm
hold on. Let me get
trying
this.
to
This
blur
is-
out
This is a
the
really
cringeness
important
for
point.
you
Don't
guys.
apologize.
I'm
Let me
trying
finish
my
this
best.
one joke. That's okay. Let me finish this point because this matters today. This is an example of white people speaking for black people, saying the police force is racist. The police force was rooted in slavery because
No, some black people think that too, by the way, Crowder. Like, that's not a white thing.
people don't agree with them. Now, I don't believe that polls should be the basis of laws. I do believe, however, that when you are specifically addressing one community, saying this is what we need to do to help this community, I do think in that scenario it is relevant what that community thinks. That's where a poll is relevant. You don't say most Americans like theft, therefore socialism. It doesn't matter, we have a constitution. But if you say, and you want to go against the Constitution, you say we don't need a police force because it hurts black people, then it's important to say, hold on a second, black people. Does that 95-year-old .com.gov white hair, blue eye guy, does he speak for you? I thought the number was 68%.
Yeah.
81% of blacks right now in this country support at least as much police presence in their neighborhoods that exist, if not more. That comes from Newsweek. You can go to louderwithcrowder.com. I have a link in the description for all the details, all the sources. So let's walk through this really quickly. We have Donald Trump Jr. On the show here. Let me know when we have him on the call. Let's go to when people say Republicans there was the racist flip. Okay.
There was. And if you want more of that, I should most likely have a link in the description about historians, if I'm correct, actual historians debunking what PragerU tried to debunk with the Switch. So, and I go more into detail about the Switch, and I'm going to try to reference most of them. Most, what I know from the Switch comes from those, I think they had 3-part videos. I should have those links in the description down below.
So let's go back in history. All right. So what do we have as far as Democrat racist policies back then? And I don't just want to say you're racist.
Which are conservative. They were conservative. And then the switch happened because conservatism wasn't really a Democrat thing anymore. Liberalism, the new left, and progressivism became the new left and all those things. And so they switched to the Republican Party because the Republican Party also went from sort of liberal, progressive to more conservative and more capitalistic, and so you have what we have today.
You're racist. No, you're racist. No, let's look at A to Z.
Yeah.
Look at the past. Let's look at today. Confederacy. Southern Democrats. Jim Crow. Southern Democrats. Opposition to civil.
Made by Democrats, but guess what? Confederacy, conservative. KKK, conservative. Anti-civil rights, conservative. Who are they now? Who did they switch to? Who did they voted for recently? Republicans, because there was a switch.
Civil rights, largely Democrats. Robert Byrd, fourth in line for
Conservatives.
If a few planes went down under Barack Obama, who used the N-word repeatedly on air, was the one who stood up and filibustered the Civil Rights Act. Democrats. Gun control laws.
Who were what? Conservative.
Democrats. Now, let's look at Democrats. Democrats. Opposition to civil rights, largely Democrats. Robert Byrd, fourth in line for the presidency. If a few planes went down under Barack Obama, who used the N-word repeatedly on air, was the one who stood up and filibustered the Civil Rights Act. Democrats. Gun control laws, exclusively Democrats.
Yes, which is not Republican and not really, which is not conservative, so, but could be used by conservatives, which he already pointed out that it was used via conservatives who didn't want black people to own guns, so they weren't considered American citizens. Again, conservative. Who are they now? Who do they vote recently now? Republicans. Here's a switch.
Now, let's look at Democrats today.
All right.
Well, here's the thing. People will say, no, now they're trying to correct it. It's still racist.
Which they have. They literally have tried to. Oh, it's still racist. Well, yeah, a lot of things are still racist that you don't think are racist, Crowder. So, again, who's talking? Like, seriously.
Because it is seeing everything through the
Look who's talking.
of race. You created gun control laws because you didn't want black people to have guns. You created...
Okay, and now it's way different because now people are doing gun control laws for the sake of children and for the sake of other people as a whole because people are tired to see the thoughts and prayers, and then it's like, well, my child just died. A lot of children have died. Part of a lot of generations of kids have died. Maybe let's try to fix that. The conservatives are so uptight on abortion for pretty good reasons, I agree with to an extent. But when it comes to guns, no thoughts and prayers, mental issue, laws don't fix anything. But abortion laws will fix everything, apparently. Make it make sense, guys. Make it make sense.
Literacy test because you didn't want black people to vote. You guys opposed the Civil Rights Act because Democrats didn't want black people, again, to vote.
Yep, and guess what? What were they? What were they, folks? Conservative.
So even if you look today...
And who are conservatives now? Republicans. So there's most likely was a switch.
You say, well, today, though, they support affirmative action. You support affirmative action because you exclusively believe that black people cannot make it into universities.
No, it's not like because they just can't make it. They're just too dumb. It's more like, well, they're most likely, their drinking water might not be so good, or their environment of education might not be so good, so let's try to help them out via affirmative action. But then it became systemically racist, mainly to Asians and white people. So its intent was not necessarily the racism of low expectations, but more of recognizing low racism, environmental racism in a sense.
If not for your help. Just like black people couldn't possibly want the police force, even though they, when polled, every single time say, you're wrong.
Well, not necessarily. And again, it depends on which poll. If it's like, do you want police officers? Yes, most black people do. Okay, do you want police officers XYZ, or do you want them to be XYZ, or how blah blah blah? It might be a little bit different. He doesn't show you those types of polls. Interesting.
Wrong, and you don't speak for them. Not to mention, of course, they look through the lens of race and they say, oh, an Asian, we have to get them out of Stanford.
Yeah.
Everything back then was seen through the prism of race. And that was seen as, of course, let's oppress these people. And now today, every policy that you look at from the Democrats that is designed to come and help you in the name of anti-racism is predicated on the idea that you were oppressed. And even though we're talking about hundreds of years ago, you're so incapable now that let us step in and help. Let us step...
No, it's more so recognizing that there's effects when it comes to racism, and people might need a leg up, or at least they need the boots to actually get them up by the bootstraps. They need boots and also straps. They're barefoot. They need socks and shoes and shoelaces. If we give them that, and that's all they need, now some might say, now let's help them walk. No, we can walk ourselves, okay? Thank you, but I can walk myself. I just need the socks and shoes and shoelaces like everybody else does have those things. Like, seriously.
Step in and make sure you can get a several hundred point score, lower score in the SATs. Let us step in and make sure that you don't have any police, because that's what you want. They were racist yesterday, they were racist today, and they will be racist tomorrow. The closest thing you have with Republicans is voter ID, and that knows no racial boundaries. I think that Gerald, who's really white, needs an ID just as much as
a white vest.
Uncle Tim Scott, as Democrats lovingly refer to him.
Well, one of the things there, one of the hottest topics is abortion, which was designed to limit the black population. But
it's actually a lot more complicated than that. I would most likely also have in the link in the description down below a movie review of a movie called Roe V Wade, and it's from God Awful Movies, or GAM, if you want to say it that way, for obvious Christian reasons. They talk a little bit more about, actually, the whole reason about abortion and those things in there. We should have it there. But I just want to remember, they tried to use it as birth control, even though it's not birth control, and so the person that they're talking about, whose name I keep forgetting for some weird reason, for I remember, she was a product of her time, but also for I remember, she didn't use it for racist means. Abortion was not made to eliminate the black population, it was to have fairness, because of which white people can have birth control and abortion as much as they want, while us black people couldn't, and they didn't have the resources to have children. Now, depends on your view of suffering and things of that nature. Point is, the intent was not actually racist necessarily, but she was a product of her time. She did have what we would consider to be now very racist statements then and there. But sniff test here. Okay, is abortion now trying to eliminate black people, or is the argument something else? It's something else. So maybe, just maybe, it's something else.
Like Margaret Sanger and also the Undesirables.
Margaret Sanger, yes.
So I'm surprised they don't have abortions at Hot Topic. Have you seen the people that go in there?
They have all had abortions. It's not a part of their policy.
Easy.
Yeah, services.
If you go in the stockroom, though, they will provide a mammogram.
And also welfare. Welfare, one of the most damaging things to the black community, even though it's said under the guise of helping people. All of these things, and I'm sure somebody else has said this before, but it's the government plantation that they want you on now. They want you dependent on...
Yes, the government plantation. Well, especially now, unless if you're having a tattoo or whatever, we'll just take you to a different plantation. El Salvador prison notorious. Oopsie, you're a citizen? Well, sorry about
them
that.
For what
we'll take a look at it.
Think what
without
to
any
do,
accountability,
what rights
obviously.
to have. And Republicans are just saying, no, you should be free to do what you want.
Yeah.
Go and live your life.
Well, again, let's go back to the sniff test, right? We go to the sniff test, go, okay, hold on, Donald Trump, racist, obviously hates him. Well, hold on, did he get record number of black voters for Republican? Record?
Yeah. Sure, mainly because he seemed to kind of speak what we were speaking in a sense, and also we were kind of just tired of nonsense, and he was saying something that we liked. But, hold on, sniff test again. Wait, didn't Trump say a lot of things that might be considered racist? Didn't apologize for the exonerated 5, has not, at this point in time of this recording, has said, Chuck Schumer is acting like a Palestinian in a battle, and at that, if I'm correct, that's a direct quote from the man himself, Donald Trump. That seems quite racist, obviously, so he might be kind of racist, maybe. Interesting.
A number of Latinos, and I get that it's not a majority, but it's an uphill battle, of course, because of, again, the media and the president not allowed to speak directly to black people on social media kind of affects him.
Well, I think what do you have to lose was really the main point of that.
Yeah. And you know what? Not only do they have nothing to lose, but all Americans, their average wages went up $5,000 in 3 years, as opposed to $1,000 under Barack Obama. There was record low black unemployment. So, again, the sniff test, if you go, okay, look, let's say that Donald Trump is a horrible racist who didn't have...
Yeah, I won't say horrible racist, but a product of his time, and seems to not have changed his views on his wording on things. And again, having to apologize to the exonerated 5, acting like a Palestinian in a battle, and at that to Chuck Schumer, who's a Jewish person. Maybe, just maybe, somewhat a little bit racist.
Have Arsenio Hall clearly act as a diversity win on Celebrity Apprentice. Let's assume that everything you say is correct. Yeah. But these
and
policies have led to record low black unemployment. They've actually consistently decreased crime until we had the modern pandemic, an excuse to riot. So, would you...
Bad people can sometimes do good things. Sniff test.
Say, let's go the complete opposite direction to help blacks. You had 8 years.
Yeah.
Blacks weren't doing better. 3 years, exponentially better. If you're in this to help black Americans, why would you go the opposite direction? Yeah. It doesn't pass the sniff test. And you guys, again, you can comment. You can just comment below. You can't comment right now when it's live, but afterwards, which one do you think is the most egregious? I think the closest thing that people might say for Republicans is, Nixon and the war on drugs. And I think that there's some legitimacy to that claim.
Yeah,
and we'll go into that.
I would agree fully.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and you finally had a president stand up and say, "You can do it. If you go out and take full advantage of the system that everybody has access to, you can be a success in life. You don't have to depend on."
And also, the former president, I think, pardoned a lot of people with non-violent drug charges. So they would like that, right? Right. I don't know.
Let's go do it. And they did.
The Daily Show.
Black people said, I'm empowered to go do this. I'm going to go do this. I can do it.
Right.
That's exactly what happened under Donald Trump, and yet he was called a racist.
Yeah.
Well, because they didn't like it. They were taking black people out of being dependent on the government.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you would think that, hey, you know what, having safer neighborhoods and having record low unemployment would be important.
Yeah. Because I thought all we had to do for Mexico is make sure that they had jobs so that they wouldn't be coming over the border. I thought that was a good thing for people to have.
Well, there are a lot of Mexican Americans who do have jobs. It's MS-13 crowding our prisons, who for some reason we're not allowed to send back.
And having intercourse at bus stops.
It's funny because, well, comedy is dead on the right. Comedy's dead, folks.
Well, you know what? Canadians have been known to do that too.
On the right, at least. The crime scene is just so bloody.
Oh, Dave.
No.
Too much to
Wait, I think we have
handle.
Donald Trump, but the screen is sideways.
Yeah, they're working on it.
Maybe, let me ask you this first question. I'm glad that you're with us. Are you bored? All right.
This is comment that I had when it came to Republicans wanting to live your life and all those things, all that jazz, and the lies and nonsense. Yes, Republicans are saying live how you want to live, unless if you're a trans person, or in this case now, just a trans person, a possibly gay person as well, a woman, minority, somewhat. You can't live how you want to live, or, gay marriage, can't have that. But everybody else can, yes, but everybody else can. That's actually what Republicans are saying right now, especially now. Like, come on. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not trick ourselves. Let's be truthful and be consistent and be truthful. We gotta be truthful, especially during these lying times.